how's Daddy about Cincinnati? What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.
Hello, Reds fans, and welcome to another edition of We Love Our Team. Along with my partner, Randy Freaking, I'm Jack Greiner, and today we are pleased to welcome Dr. Ed Hirt. Dr. Hirt is a professor of social psychology at Indiana University. He received his undergraduate degree from the University of Dayton in 1981. Randy likes that. And his PhD from IU in 1987. He has studied and written on the psychology of fandom. Dr. Hirt, welcome to We Love Our Team.
Hey, thank you very much.
Hey, Doctor, you are the perfect guest for this program. And so before we get into our therapy session here for longtime Reds fans, you grew up as a Reds fan, is that correct?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I was the youngest of five, grew up in Montford Heights, West Side, Cincinnati, yeah. Went to St. X High School, and then went up to UD because that was the family school. But my parents were definitely Reds fans. I remember the thing that was a big incentive as a kid to, like, if you get straight A's, you could get Reds tickets. You could get 3 tickets and sit out in the bleachers someplace and stuff. So that was definitely an incentive for me to do it. So I grew up, I'm old enough. You can see the gray hair, right? I mean, I was Big Red Machine. And so, so I got to see a few World Series. I got to see that amazing team that they had for this in the 70s and stuff. And so, yeah, that was a big part of my childhood, to enjoy the Reds and to go to games and to partake in that. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I think for our listeners, we should, full disclosure, we had no idea of this, that you grew up in Cincinnati. I don't think Randy or I realized that. So
right.
Montford Heights. So Randy went to St. X as well. You guys might have been at St. X about the same time, right? I mean, what year did you graduate from St. X?
77, I think.
Yeah, I was 75.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we had some teachers in common. We had same coaches, same things. Couldn't beat Moeller. That was my biggest thing, hating Moeller, and Jerry Faust. And
awesome.
We had swimming.
I went to LaSalle, so I was in I spent a lot of time in Montford Heights. Yep. So that's crazy. Well,
my oldest brother went to LaSalle. It was his first year. So he was the first class.
Oh, he was the first? Wow. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. So let's see, that was 60. Well, he graduated in 64 then, right? So
I guess. Yeah. That sounds right. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. So growing up, who was your favorite player, your players?
Yeah, you at least prime me to think about this and stuff. I've been a big outfielder. I just love outfielders. So the first one I remember is Vada Pinson, of being and then I love Bobby Tolan. Yeah. Bobby Tolan was there. But then, as years went on, then we had Griffey Jr. come back. He was definitely, of all of them, my favorite, because seeing him and his enthusiasm for playing and stuff. But Eric Davis too. I mean, so they're all outfielders. It's just kind of funny. I don't know why. Maybe it's the combination of defense and speed and all those kind of things. But yeah, I've definitely been an outfielder, and even other players since then. It tends to be that position that I get really jazzed up about.
Did you play baseball as a kid?
Terribly. I think
were you an outfielder?
Were you an outfielder? Fans, right? I mean, if we can't do it, we could at least enjoy it and appreciate it with somebody else. But great. Softball was about as far as I got.
Okay.
Are you still a Reds fan to this day, Dr. Hirt?
I'll admit, I am just one of those people that just picks up teams very quickly and stuff. So I have a soft spot for the Reds, and when the Reds are good, I definitely jump on the bandwagon. I have an actual, because of my Dayton roots, an interest in the Dayton Dragons. So they're the minor league team and stuff. And so I have a friend who actually has some investment into the Dragons and stuff, and has kept me going there. And so guys that have come up through the ranks like Hunter Green have been people that, you saw as a Dragon and then see them graduate. Ellie De La Cruz, people like that it's been fun to see that and see them come in and make their mark of that. And, the people that are the leadership of the Dragons immediately go, be on the lookout for this one. Like this guy's going to move quick. Right. And so that's been fun to track for me. To do that. But I have to admit, I have many other teams, and playing fantasy is the worst, right? Because once you play fantasy sports in anything, then you have players, all kinds of teams, and you get those things of, oh, my pitcher's going against this hitter, and I hope he gets 2 hits, but he still gets the shutout. And
Right.
Do you play What If Sports?
Oh yeah.
What is What If Sports? I'm not familiar with that.
What If Sports is fantasy sports on steroids. It's fantastic. You have to be a little bit of a stat nerd to play it.
Yeah.
But I play it. I Hardball Dynasty. I've got a couple franchises, and I play Sim League Baseball, and it's addicting. It is a great product. It's unbelievable. If you're interested in fantasy, What If Sports is the cure.
And being a stats nerd, I mean, that's one of the things that attracts you so much to baseball sometimes compared to the other sports. Is just, growing up with baseball cards and following everybody's stats, and it really is kind of unique in that way that makes it particularly appealing to those of us that get into that, right?
So are the Dragons like had a run of sellouts? Didn't they generally sell out like pretty much every game?
They still have it.
Is that still happening? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know whose record they broke. Portland, somebody else, Trailblazers or somebody like that had close to 1,000. But yeah, they've gone well beyond that. It's amazing, and there's just such a loyal following there. They really know what they're doing, and what a great nexus of things to have it be in Dayton, that close to Cincinnati. They have a fan base that already like the Reds, and they have a really good, beautiful stadium. And
okay, it's a cool stadium. Yeah, I mean, it's I've been I think 2 times, and it's a great fan experience. Right. It really is, as most minor league is. I think. I mean, I think they do a lot to entertain the audience besides baseball.
Absolutely. So you don't have to be a baseball fan to have a good time.
Right.
Okay, Jack, I'm going crazy here. We need to get into the therapy session.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Hirt, how did you get interested in studying fan behavior?
Most of it was trying to understand myself and my friends, right? That for me, one of the big things, and we'll get into this one, is is it okay to not root for the home team, right? And so when people do that, you're disloyal. Like, how could you do that? How could you like, one of the oppositions, or, different other kinds of things? I'm a big basketball fan. My daughter played collegiate basketball and is a basketball coach, actually at Denison in Ohio.
Really?
She's the head women's coach there and stuff. But watching those kind of games and stuff, it's just immediately get into the sports of that. But then she was in one team. She played at Kenyon. Then gets to an assistant job at Oberlin. So that team used to be one of your rivals. Now you used to hate them. Now that you actually work there, and you can't wear the clothes. You can't have anything. Now she gets the job at Denison. So now she has to hate both Kenyon and Oberlin. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. And so we have all the gear from when she's playing. It's like, you gotta throw that one out. Can't wear that one, right? I mean, it's so funny how much this takes control of many aspects of your life. And I just think it's kind of funny that how much of a role it plays, and also just how much fun we have with it. I mean, as you said, this is a fun part of who we are and how we spend our time. And people who are non-fans just think, like, why do you care so much? You were talking about your wife's reaction to the game last night, and you're cursing and screaming and getting all worked up, and people, why are you so worked up about it? It's only a game. And just all those things. Being a psych major and then finding something that I already cared about, it's like, oh, this is perfect, right? Like, in fact, I think that was one of the reasons why I stayed a psych major, was I could study something like interesting that like I was interested in as a profession. Like, they'll pay me to do this. I mean, oh my God, like this, I found something. Otherwise, than my dad was an engineer. I don't want to be an engineer. I'd rather study sportsmanship. get to
Well,
watch games as part of my it's part of my job.
That's good. Kenyon and Denison, that's a bitter rivalry, isn't it? I mean, I had a
They're only
friend
20
who went to Kenyon, and he just said the Denison football game was like the biggest deal of the year.
Yeah, I think they're only 20 miles apart, but
right,
the big rivalry they have is swimming. They're both the two
right,
powerhouses in swimming. So football maybe, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's more like the swimming where it's knockdown drag out. I have a friend who is a professor at Hope College, and he was trying
yeah.
to convince to me that the Calvin Hope thing was up in the realms of rivalries near like the Yankees and Red Sox. And I looked at him like, are you high? Like, what? Are you kidding? But it is. I mean,
Yeah.
that one is another really big collegiate one that like people don't understand, but it's really intense. And so
How long's your daughter been a coach at Denison? I'm just curious.
she's in year 3.
Three. Okay,
Yes.
my daughter got recruited to play at Denison, and but that would have been a few years before your daughter was coaching there. So yeah.
So basketball?
Basketball. She wound up going to University of Chicago, and
Oh,
their
okay.
their big rival was Wash U. And
Oh,
so yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's D1 or NBA or D3 or high school. I mean, my God, you know what it's like in Cincinnati with the high school rivalries, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
crazy. Well, so I read an interview you gave where you talked about a concept called basking in reflected glory. Can you explain that concept a little bit more
So
for us?
this was the thing that really started me in my psychology study of this, is that was the going theory of why people are fans. And so it was developed by a guy named Bob Cialdini at Arizona State University. And I actually went to work with him because of wanting to study fanship, and he was the guy. And so his main view in that basking in reflected glory, or how it was often communicated, was by an acronym. People in psych and a lot of fields like to talk about acronyms. So it's burging, burging, however you want to say it. But it was basically understanding that one of the ways that we feel good about ourselves beyond our own accomplishments is to link ourselves to others who are successful. So the classic thing that most people think about is name dropping. If you know somebody who is super successful in their field, right? Somebody from your same hometown, somebody from our alma mater, somebody that, you have some connection, a relative and stuff who does something, again, they might be in business, it could be in success, they could win a Nobel Prize, they could, have their movie, picked up and stuff like that, whatever. I mean, people talk about that and they just say, oh, my so-and-so, did this and stuff. And it's like, it's not you. Who cares? But the thing is, we derive a lot of our own sense of self and our benefits and stuff to ourselves by our associations to others who are successful. So we are basking in their reflected glory. Like they are the ones who have attained the glory and stuff. And because we're connected to them in some ways, then we can, again, achieve some kind of indirect kind of success from that association. And so, people do it all kinds of things. And we laugh about this. I mean, some of the tangential things that people see as valid associations, like, oh, I ran into somebody in the airport, but, oh, there's somebody, you actually met Taylor Swift, blah, 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 or something like that, right? And people think that's amazing. And it's like, you saw them on a plane, right? Or you brushed against them at something or whatever. But it kind of works, right? And so, again, the closer, the better. As a parent now, how much we gloat on our kids' accomplishments or, relatives and stuff. I mean, certainly that's the closest one, right? Because we really have a lot of association with them. But as I said, anything that we might have in common, growing up in the same community and neighborhood or whatever. So it was that kind of notion, and his extension of that was with teams. The same thing is true. It's not even just a person; it could be a team. And because I'm a fan of a team, if my team's doing well, I look good, right? Mm-hmm. I can take pride in my team's success, and so I tout it. I go wearing the hats, I go wearing the team uniforms, and showing people that my association with their team. But the point of that was always interesting to me was the idea was that only works for success. And so all of a sudden having those associations to some loser is something you want to like, oh God, that's not me, right? And so the best example that he talked about in his early work on this was when our team's successful and we ask people to talk about their team, all of a sudden it becomes we.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's we're number one.
Right.
We're great. We. And it's like, you didn't do anything but just watch the game, right? You put the hat on, and stuff like that. What's your role in this team's success? But when they lose, it is they, right? It's third person. It's distancing yourself from it, etc. And so, it can be as indirect as that. But my thing was, but that's not a fan. That's like fair weather shit, right? I mean, that we don't tend to think of that as a real fan. So my thing when I started working with Cialdini was the whole thing of like, but that doesn't explain real fanship, right? And so with real fans, they're stuck with their team, right? I mean, they're going to stick with them win or lose. And so the thing is, what this says is that they're going to be feeling awful about themselves. They're going to be penalized by their association with their team, but they still do it. And so the question is, how did they trade those things off? And so, yeah, that was my first endeavor into this field of studying fandom, was trying to say, how is it that real fans deal with losses as well as wins?
I think
Doctor,
Marty Brenneman used to tell a story, I think, where when he started broadcasting the Reds, he said "we" a lot, and I think it was like Jack Billingham who said something to him, like, well, how many innings did you pitch, Marty, or something
exactly.
like that. It sort of hit him that maybe I ought to be a little more objective than that.
Yeah.
Well, you talked in that same interview about when teams are successful and their fans are, are happy about that. They kind of have an extra spring in their step.
Mm-hmm.
They feel better. Now, I personally think following a team like the Reds keeps me a little bit more grounded. But is that healthy for people generally, one way or another?
Well, that's a complex question. So let's break it down a little bit. But the one thing is true is that clearly it is the case that the more you kind of ally yourself with your team, and that's an important part of who you are and how you identify yourself, not only does your mood kind of bounce around with their success and failure, but what we were able to show was that it actually translates into your sense of yourself. Because again, if they're an extension of you, if I see myself as part of this team and things like that, if they're doing well, the world's going well, right? That life is good, right? And so I feel optimistic about my life, and things are going to go well. Things are on the upturn, right? And so we did this study, which I didn't know would ever work, but we had people do a bunch of tests after watching games and didn't know the outcome. So again, it was, do you win? Do you lose? We'll see. And so after wins and stuff, had them do all these tests, and they actually estimated that they could do a lot better at a whole range of things, from gambling to, my favorite one was dating. So we had college students. You say, I'm on a college campus, so we had college students participating. They watched an IU basketball game and they won against they were all conference games, so they were all meaningful games and stuff. And so afterwards they had to estimate, like, how many of these anagrams can you solve? How many, mini basketball free throws can you make? How many, and then we had a simulated dating game where we had photos of different potential, dates and stuff, and said, if you ask this person out, what kind of response would you anticipate to get? And then had them do gambling tests. And on all these things, they tended to be way more optimistic after the wins than after the losses. And the favorite thing was just to see it in the losses, where people would just be like, nah, not going to happen. Right. So the thing is, not only I bummed out, but the world kind of is like against me, right? I mean, things kind of suck. And so therefore I don't think I'm going to have a good chance on this, or, I'm not going to make as many free throws, or, all this kind of stuff. I get kind of pessimistic. So the thing is, then of course the response that people had to that was, then why is anybody a fan? Because most teams are going to lose, right? Ultimately, there's only going to be one champion, and so only one is going to be feeling good at the end of the day, right? So that's where we have to get at these other questions, which is, why do you persist at it? Are you just a glutton for punishment? Is it like self-flagellation or something like that? Or is it one of these kind of things where there's other compensatory kind of things that we get from it? And I really believe, and this is just me speculating, but the best part of it is just the camaraderie we have in sharing it with other people. Because really, it's hard to be a fan all by yourself. I mean, you can be in a vacuum, and people are on social media and things like that and doing stuff. Maybe they're watching all the things by themselves, but by and large, most of us share it with other people. And so it's such a bond to have that in common. I mean, we say we're both Reds fans, and all of a sudden I feel affinity to you that I wouldn't have to somebody if they weren't. Right. And it's the same thing. I think there's so many aspects of our life that connect us to other people. And fanship's a big one, right? I mean, many of us, it's like, oh, we're from the same religion, we're from the same hometown, we have certain things in common, right? We may have the same race or ethnicity or whatever. I'm Irish, you're, whatever, German, whatever. But being a fan and seeing somebody else wear the gear or just talk about it and stuff, we already have topics to talk about. We can reminisce about, past successes of our team and talk about players, talk about, history and stuff that is just such a connector. And win or lose, it's still there, right? The thing is, in some ways, commiserating about losses is almost as a good a bonding experience as celebrating the wins together. And of course, you get both, hopefully. I mean, as long as they sometimes come through, we get both, right? I mean, it would be pretty hard to have a winless team and stuff and be able to sort of talk about that. But there's always next year too. That's the other thing that's wonderful about fanship is we always turn it on again, and it's like new players, new coach, new situation, right? Let's jettison last year and look forward.
Maybe that's what we should rename our podcast, Randy. There's always next year with Jack and Randy. It's funny though. I when I was a younger lawyer and I would go to conferences, and I was always kind of intimidated because everybody there seemed to know more about the law and that sort of thing than me. And I felt like I needed to, talk to people, but it was so easy just to stand in a corner. And it kind of, two things. I started just asking people, tell me about your family. Mm-hmm. And then if whatever city they were from, I'd ask, well, are you a Cubs fan or, that sort of thing. And more often than not, that really did get the conversation going. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying about the bond. I also went to law school with a guy named Dave Knight, who was a Dolphins fan. This is in the early 80s when the Dolphins were pretty good. And he said, with all seriousness, he said, my mood for the week is dictated by what the Dolphins do on Sunday.
Right.
He was 100% serious. He wasn't joking,
Yeah.
What do you mean he wasn't joking, Jack? I mean, that's true, isn't it? I mean,
well, it is. Yeah.
Isn't your mood changed by how the Reds do, or is it basketball?
It definitely can. There's no doubt about it. But hey, Doctor, so I think you were at IU. Maybe a little. Yeah. I don't know if you crossed paths with Bob Knight or not, but I'm just sort of wondering about how maybe fandom can, shape reality for people, because I think that was that was interesting when he got fired and just sort of what came out of that. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, no. So I was here when Knight was here. Actually, I was a student at IU. And got my degree here. And so I was here in the mid 80s, and I was here when he had the Olympic team here.
Oh, wow.
I remember being here that summer, and I think it was 1984. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. They had like 100 players come through here. And I mean, all these people you'd heard about, and Charles Barkley got cut off that team.
Right.
Because he was overweight and he didn't really focus and stuff. And you have Jordan and people walking through our union, right? It was just incredible. And so we got to go to some of the practices when they were selecting that team. And of course, there's a little bit of thing like Steve Alford got on that team. He's an IU. Was he really one of the 12 best, right? So there's always some political kind of things about that. But, he knew him. He knew he'd make every free throw. I mean, down the stretch, and he'd be playing when they're up 25 points anyway, right? So, but it was just an interesting time. And I mean, you got to see the artistry of, he was a great coach, but you get the other part of it, right? And I mean, I was here for the chair throwing incident. I was here for a lot of those things. He pulled out the whip at one point. And I mean, he said some just insane things that we know won't fly, right? And so there were multiple things that he did, and eventually the administration had to say, look, literally, you have 2 strikes, right? And if you do anything else, I'm sorry, we're going to have to terminate you. So, I mean, like him or not like him, I mean, he didn't stop. And so he forced their hand, right? And so But the thing is, it's been so interesting here because think about how many situations there have been which have had legendary coaches and how people who have followed them have just suffered from. You can never attain that. And so, IU hasn't won a championship since Knight left.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And so people look at that and say, obviously, we shouldn't have fired him. And, they were wrong to have done that in the first place. But also in terms of just nobody's able to sort of attain that legacy. And so, it's always been an interesting thing here that people have carried that torch. Obviously he's passed away now, and so hopefully they let go of the fact that he will return. But the thing is, it's just been interesting. And as you said, one of the most fascinating things as a psychologist is just how people rewrite history to kind of fit their own narrative, right? I mean, they don't think what he did was bad. They think those people were in the wrong. I mean, and so, we know as fans, what's one of the worst things that we are all guilty of? I mean, when that call happens, the refs are always wrong when it goes against our team. Let's face it, right? You look at the replay and still it doesn't make any sense, right? And so I mean, we are certainly filtering things through our own biases, through our own motivations and stuff like that. And fanship is a place where we see it, just in spades, right? I mean, that's definitely a part of it. And, it is what it is, but it is really incredibly how powerful those forces are in terms of us believing that somebody's in the wrong if it does anything that it goes against what we think is the right thing. And removing a legendary coach was never right, no matter what he does, right? He could walk on water, right, or whatever. So it's been frustrating but really fascinating to follow it at the years that have happened since then, in terms of people changing their narratives about that to sort of fit the idea that they were in the wrong, they should have never done it.
So I'm thinking about the joy that like the Cincinnati Bengals brought to this community, mm-hmm. and how everybody rallied around that, and you could really get a sense that people just felt better when they were doing so well. But I'm more curious about us Reds fans. I mean, how are we supposed to cope with this? Do you have some recommended coping mechanisms for people like me and Jack and our listeners who suffer through this seemingly season after season after season? How am I supposed to deal with this every night?
Well, we're also the victims of our own expectations. So one of the things that's always fun about sports is that we said there's always next year, right? So you can go into spring training, point to all these things that, this guy's back healthy. We've got these kids coming up for the rookies, and we made these trades, and all this kind of stuff. And so we can whip up expectations, but we are grounded by what the experts say and what seems realistic too as well. But I think there are those things that just all of us get sucked into year after year of believing that this is the year and this is the time when those things will all come together and stuff. And so with a young team, they're all going to mature together. They played in the minors. I mean, they get together. McLean's back. We got Ellie. We got, I mean, it's real easy to develop those scenarios. And so that's where the heartbreak happens, right? Because you've convinced yourself that this is really where it should go. I think if we go into a season knowing, everybody's hurt, we got cast-offs, it's not going to happen. So think about somebody with like the Colorado Rockies right now. It's hopeless. I mean, there's just nothing happening there. I don't care what draft pick they're getting. In the next few years, it looks bleak. I don't know what they're doing. I just have no idea how they're coping, other than to say, we live here and we're going to support the team, and we know what's going to happen. We're going to be 8-25 or whatever the record is for the next, not too distant future. White Sox, same thing. I mean, it's just, there's no hope, I think, in those. But I think for many of us that have teams like the Reds and others that, there are signs there. There are ways of doing it. It is a sort of feelings of self-torture that we get ourselves worked up and feeling like it's going to happen, or we get on a hot streak and think this is going to continue, and then all of a sudden then the injury happens, the hot streak turns into a losing streak, and all of a sudden we're back at 500 or below. So,
So I think what I hear you saying is that I shouldn't believe anything in spring training. I should think the Reds stink.
Yeah.
And then if I just convince myself that they stink, I'll feel better. I won't feel as bad when they lose,
right?
and I'll feel a lot better when they win.
Yeah, I mean, or
So I
incremental
think now I'm going to
things,
say
right?
the Reds stink.
Right. I mean, not believe this is the World Series thing, but incrementally we're improving. We're seeing this development. You can see those silver linings that start adding up to believing that we're making progress, and I'm buying into the system. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's tough on us in the process, and I think, as I said, the ups and downs that we experience with following the games and stuff. I mean, that's going to be there for the fan, but the other thing I want you to really think about, and for me this means a lot, is just that one of the things that I observed a lot in people's fanship is that feeling of loyalty, that people stick with their team, is seen as such a badge of honor for a real fan. And they really, and so we saw this with, people always talk about, well, what about those situations where, somebody sticks with a long-standing, like for Cubs fans, right? The legacy of them being the lovable losers, or, any of us has seen Fever Pitch and know about the curse of the Bambino and the Red Sox and stuff, and all those years where they were unable to, to usurp the Yankees and things like that. It's like, once that happens, I mean, there's nirvana, right? They've kicked off these curses and things like that, and they've been able to do it. And it's wonderful, and it's exciting. But when a bunch of people now all of a sudden want to jump on that bandwagon, the real fans are saying, where in the hell were you when? Right? It's like you're trying to get something for nothing. We earned this, right? We earned this, and we can celebrate it.
That's
you
right.
guys just are not playing the game right. We want you out of here. I mean, it's funny when you think that we want all these people to do. No, the loyal ones are the ones who deserve this.
No,
and the
we
rest of
paid
you
for
get
it.
lost, right? You got to do something to earn your badges here and stuff. And so I just found that fascinating because, again, I think we think that it would be one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, we want to be here. No, we want the real fans here. You guys can just wait.
We were Charlie Brown getting ready to kick that football and having Lucy yank it away year after year after year. We kept coming back. So you lead me to my next question, Doctor, which is, what do you think about people changing their allegiances? I have 4 kids.
Right.
They all live in Cincinnati, but my oldest daughter went to college in New York City. My youngest went to college in Chicago. And I told them both, I told the one in New York, don't come home a Yankee fan, and the one that went to Chicago, don't come home a Cubs fan. Did I overstep my bounds there, do you think, as a parent?
I mean, let's face it. One of the things that we know is a real bonding thing with fanship is maintaining that allegiance and those connections we feel with people. So many of the allegiances that I picked up are totally based on relationships, right? I mean, many of us think of the whole thing of, going to games with your dad and this being a real bonding experience between fathers and sons or whatever, or daughters as well. I mean, certainly, that's the case. Those are certainly one route by which it happens, but it's not the only way, right? I think sometimes, for me, one of the things that happened was my dad worked for Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, was there for 30 plus years, et cetera. And a lot of people moved to other locations. And so we had friends that took us, that moved to Milwaukee, and they took us to a Brewer game. And I was like 12 or 13 or something like that. Who the hell were the Brewers? I didn't know anything about them, but they were in the other only the National League, right? And so they were an AL team and stuff. But we had such a good time at the game, and these people were so nice and stuff that I started following the Brewers. And again, it wasn't a threat to the Reds because they were in the American League. But I just remember all these people going like, "Why the hell do you care about the Brewers?" It's like, I don't know. I just liked them, and it was interesting. And the Harvey, then you come up with scenarios, the Harvey's Wallbangers and Norman Thomas and all these people, like, they were fun, to like. And then they got in a World Series, and people were like, "Oh, your team is actually like exists, and like it's good, like good for you. Like you could enjoy that. Now they couldn't get back, but hey, it was fun for a little bit to enjoy that. But it's kind of seductive to pick up another allegiance and stuff. And again, does it make you seem like you've crossed some boundary that you're ungrateful, like a disloyal person or something? I don't know. I mean, but but that for me was always an interesting thing on that end too. So you can have those other allegiances, but hopefully you don't lose the grounding of those connections you have with people, and it's kind of fun. So again, my family, a lot of them are still big Reds fans, and so we talk about the Reds all the time. I follow them, but I've picked up other teams. I'm not going to mention some of them because I think that would get me in hot water. But again, playing fantasy, what happens? I mean, that guy's on your team, and all of a sudden it's like you like their team, and they might be good, and so.
Hey, doctor, I don't know if I'm going to phrase this correctly, but I heard a podcast recently where the guest was saying, in effect, that younger people these days are not forming as many team allegiances as they are forming like individual player allegiances, like the LeBron or Michael back in the day, or Joe Burrow. Do you think that's happening, and how does that affect your research and study?
Great. This is such a good question, and I don't have a good answer. So if you guys got some insights, I'll be all ears. But I do think that is true. And think about how sports are marketed. There's so much more marketed by individual athletes than team. And I think for many of us that grew up with teams that stuck together, the erosion of that initially with free agency, but now with NIL and all this stuff, it's just like, it's such a business. There aren't, people are switching teams. I mean, even at collegiate level, right? I mean, there's no stability to these collegiate basketball, football teams and stuff. And so, even with, we think about the Reds or we think about other teams. I mean, Burrow obviously is an interesting one because when you have players that look like they may be single team players for their career, and they may take less money to keep teams together and stuff. I mean, oh my God, these people are like literally, it was so refreshing in this day and age where we think that everybody's out and they'll just go anywhere and there's not loyalty, and it's just hard to stay connected to a team because it's like, but they don't seem like a unit. We can't count on them to be together. And so you think about like the Reds or other teams that, were together for a long time and had this kind of family almost atmosphere of them being a unit and stuff. That seems to be lost in sports. And if you can have it, I mean, you want to embrace it, and signing people long-term and trying to have that nucleus and stuff is great. But because that's not there, I think it almost kind of, it creates by necessity that you're fixating more on players just because the team is switching so much and stuff. And so that's a challenge. And I think for me, one of the best things is to think about, and I think that what I love about fanship is the connection to the past. Right. I just think that's such a big draw to this because, as you said, in terms of the relationships you have with your kids and stuff, I mean, you took them to games and, you can reminisce about those things, and we have memorabilia of those things. Look at the back of your site right there and all the stuff you got in that cabinet and stuff like that, the bobbleheads and stuff I mean, we have so many things, pennants, we have, pictures from this. I have, the catch or something like that, I mean, different kinds of things like that. And those are things that really tie us together as fans of the team. And so, even if in the present day we don't have that, we still have that link to the past that's so important. Feel that nostalgia and feel that connection. And it's something like we want to pass on to our kids, and we sort of see almost transcends, any things that are kind of happening in the present moment, because this is something that has continuity, has been a part of our lives for a long period of time. And we kind of want to pass it on and keep it going too, because I think it makes us feel like in some ways we're transcendent, that,
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of
philosophical here. Sorry.
We've talked to a lot of people on this podcast, and we see so much of it. It's almost like fandom is kind of evocative because it brings back memories, And I think Randy and I would both tell you that the number of people who talked about going to games with their dad or their mom, whatever. I mean, and how much that meant to them, and I do think that maybe. You walk into Great American, if you're my age, it might bring back memories of Crosley Field,
right,
in one way or another.
Yeah.
Do you find that in your studies?
Yeah. No, I mean, again, unfortunately, so much of our stuff has to be done by convenient sampling with collegiate students. And so you don't see that as much. But I think once you start dealing with people who have maintained allegiances for long periods of time, I mean, that is a huge part of it. And all those memories of how you got there, but also kind of, as you said, just going back, then triggers all these kind of associations that you have, whether it's the same stadium, same, kind of situation or something in the past. But I think that's such an important part of kind of our relationships with people, is connecting to that. And I mean, feeling those kind of nostalgic memories of times we took vacations together, or when, we did this, and when we were back in college, or we were back in high school and doing certain things together, et cetera. Those are such warm, you said evocative. I mean, there's so much emotion tied into that. And it's such an important kind of connection that we have with other people, that I think through sports and the emotions that we feel in sports, it makes them very powerful in those dimensions. I think there aren't too many things in our life that make many of us as emotional as sports, particularly men, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the kind of emotion that you see, and always some people say, I've never seen my dad cry. I've never seen this kind of emotion out of somebody, except in like sporting kind of things, right? And it's like, that's kind of fascinating. Like, why is that a place where you can completely let loose and reveal those, some of us might consider softer sides of our personality, or at least more emotional sides and stuff like that, versus being the strong, like, I'm kind of impervious to things around me and stuff. And so that's another thing that's just truly fascinating about why sports is a venue where that's accepted, and in sort of,
Hey, Jack, I have to say, I'm really impressed by your use of the word evocative,
Yeah.
because I had to look that one up. But
you said it.
Dr. Hirt, you were in a documentary entitled, quote, Confessions of a Cubs Fan, A Century of Waiting, unquote. How did that come about? And do you think Cubs fans lost some of their identity when they won the World Series in 2016?
Yeah, I think part of it's just the fact that I'm in the Midwest, right, and certainly familiar with a lot of Cubs fans, and being in Indiana. I mean, we're a weird state because there is no, outside of basketball, right? I mean, for baseball, there's no real home team, so a lot of people are Cubs fans. Few Cardinal fans. Scott Rowland and stuff is from Jasper, so he like, there were some people that were Cardinal fans and a lot of Reds fans too. So it's just this weird nexus. But when the Cubs were good, and kind of broke that whole thing, it was just, I think they were searching for people who study fanship and might be able to resonate with the Cubs tribulations over those years. And I mean, the Reds got to ding the Cubs a few times, the Cardinals, many other teams, Pirates, other teams and stuff. But so we can all understand how many times we watched them choke with glee. Right? But for them, I mean, it really was just this incredible thing. I mean, their identity was to be that losing team, that team that chokes in August, and just heartbreak for their fans and stuff. And so for them to actually get through, it really was seen as this incredibly freeing thing, and the exhilaration they felt about it. It was just, I mean, but now who are they, right? Who are
a bunch
the
of
Cubs?
obnoxious fans now.
Huh?
They're a bunch of obnoxious fans now.
They're pretty obnoxious, yeah. I mean, there's the allure of Wrigley, right? I mean, a lot of people just love Wrigley and like the day games, and again, the history of that and stuff. But yeah, I mean, they definitely are interesting right now in terms of that. And this is the year when they got to do it. I mean, they've gone pretty much all in, which is a little bit surprising for them. But yeah, it'll be fun to see if they do that August swoon again.
Well, that 2016 World Series, I still to this day, had there not been the rain delay, I honestly don't think the Cubs win that thing. And
well, we have Trent Conan now.
So of all teams to be playing, it's the Cubs who haven't won since whenever, and the Guardians who haven't, or then the Indians who haven't won since forever. I mean, it was sort of a weird confluence, and then the rain delay just sucks all the momentum away from the Indians. It was crazy.
Right.
Well, hey, we're running close on time. But we want to put you, before we leave, we're going to put you on the spot with this last question. Okay, Randy, we got a drum roll.
Oh yeah, we do. We have a drum roll, I think. Let's break it up.
All right. What fan base, Doctor, in your expert opinion, do you find the most insufferable?
Based upon a reasonable degree of psychological data.
Yeah. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah. Okay. Can I go in each sport?
Sure.
Cool. Okay.
I love
Well,
it.
in basketball, I'm in Indiana. It's Kentucky, hands down. UK. Okay, no doubter. I will stand by that one. The others, I'm gonna be a bandwagon. I mean, let's face it. In football, it's got to be Dallas. Anybody
Yeah.
who proclaims themselves to be America's team just immediately is like, no. Okay, so that for me, like, I mean, we may find certain, touting certain teams and stuff annoying, but the America's team just, whatever. And then I'm gonna play to the crowd here, and of course say Yankees are insufferable. Come on, I mean, all those championships and stuff. I mean, I like Aaron Judge as well as anybody else. That guy is amazing, but
Yeah.
I'm not a Yankee fan. It won't bother me if they continue to not win any World Series. So, as much as I don't really love the Dodgers, I was kind of happy they won last year, and they could, if it requires them to win, I'll take that over the Yankees.
Doctor, I am just delighted that not only did you answer that question directly, you didn't equivocate, you didn't, hesitate, but you nailed it.
Okay, good. I have agreement.
I don't know how anybody could argue with your picks. I really don't.
How about college football?
Oof. I could get in big trouble here. Big trouble. Personally, I could opt for it, and I'm not going to say that they are, but Notre Dame is up there.
Oh.
Even though I'm a Catholic, even though my family, I have relatives that live in South Bend, but they're pretty bad. But,
all right, Doctor.
Then we could say Alabama. I mean, there's other ones that are candidates and stuff, but when they had their own network, I want to still stick with Notre Dame. Right?
I can't. Okay, here's the thing.
Big trouble. You better not let anybody in my.
I grew up, in my Catholic home with my Subway alumni father watching Lindsey Nelson on Sunday mornings, doing the highlights. I went to Notre Dame for law school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But having said all that,
yeah.
I don't completely disagree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right, having their own network. And then I hate the movie Rudy. I just hate it. I think it's a terrible movie. And I just think about, can you imagine? Okay, just give me 1 minute. I'm on a range. I know you're the guest, but here we go. Okay. Can you imagine if a movie came out about some walk-on at UK basketball? Like, we'd all be just, give me a break. They made a movie about that. I mean, who cares? So anyway, that's my little rant. So I'm not a. So I wouldn't say I'm an ally. I wouldn't say I'm an ally at that point, Doctor. But I take your point.
Ohio State can be another, though.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So the Buckeye fans, okay, they won, but they're pretty tough too. So they're big rivals on that.
Yeah.
That dishonor.
Okay,
so Randy, do you feel like you've made progress with therapy today?
What do you think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're gonna rename our podcast "We Hate Our Team." They stink, and then we're gonna feel so good when they win.
We hate them, but we love them. There you go. How about that?
We hate them, but we love them.
Yeah, we do. Hey, thank you, Doctor. This was really a lot of fun and truly informative. This was awesome.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I saved $45 in therapy session. I think my copay is $45. So I appreciate it very much.
Anytime.
Okay, hey, give it up for Dr. Hirt. Ed Hirt, Indiana University, Doctor of Psychology.
All right.
They loved it.
The whole town's batty about about Cincinnati, what a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.